I'm joined now by artist Jeff Bleierveld. Jeff, thank you for being here. Your work is so detailed. I was researching you and looking at all of your stuff. I thought, man, it takes a really a certain kind of personality to create that kind of art. When did you start doing your line drawings?
I started doing the type of lawn drawing that I'm doing now probably about 10 years ago. I was traveling a lot for work, and I would take a notepad with me and some pens and pencils, and sometimes I'd do it in a hotel room, sometimes in an airport, and it was just kind of something to fill in the time. And then family started saying, wow, this is kind of neat. You should think about selling some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you always think of yourself as an artist, or did you use art as a creative outlet?
On my mother's side of the family, especially, there was a lot of artistic influence from my grandfather, from my uncles as well. My grandfather immigrated from the Netherlands and brought with him all sorts of oil paintings and sketches, and so they were all in their homes. So anytime we'd visit our grandparents, you know, it was like visiting the museum, you know, and kind of seeing all this art on the walls. So that was inspiring. Uncles as well that got into as well, commercial artists, other things like that as well. So yeah, all through school, I was always really interested in art classes, and you know, other students would be scratching their heads trying to figure out, what am I going to draw? And I'd be like off, you know, just going.
Yeah.
And so we'd do it at home, and it was a lot of fun.
You mentioned that with all of the familial influence that it was inspiring. Was it ever intimidating?
Yes, yes, yeah, it could certainly be that as well. Oil painting, for example, is something I've never enjoyed a whole lot. I've never mastered it either. So my grandfather and my uncles, some of my uncles did a lot of oils. I mess around a little bit with acrylics, and that's about as far as I get into doing that. But watercolor, I've always really enjoyed. It's kind of quick and it's easy. Some people find it really intimidating and frustrating because it does things sometimes that you don't want it to do. But, you know, kind of like Bob Ross, they're happy accidents sometimes,
sure.
You know, that you just kind of like go, wow, I didn't know it was going to do that. That's kind of amazing.
It's so interesting to me that you also dabble in watercolor, because as I was looking at your stuff, I thought, this is so like the antithesis of watercolor because of the sort of lack of precision. Is that why you like it?
Yeah, I like it. Some people, I mean, just really enjoy, I enjoy just the black and the white. You know, I use India ink, and it just makes a real impression. But then, you know, started adding a little bit of watercolor to it as well, so for that pen and ink look. And that's a lot of fun. I do that especially, I take commissions. I have people who want to have a drawing done of a home. I've a couple of realtors who've contacted me that when they're selling somebody's home, be able to do that. And then especially it's really nice to be able to add a little bit of color to it as well, and it's some fun. So yeah, it is, they are complete opposites from one another, but when you put them together, it's really an impressive outcome.
Now, you mentioned India ink. Tell me about that. What is it?
Well, it's a very black ink, and it doesn't fade over time. So a lot of the technical pens that you might use, you know, are India ink. So another part of my background, in high school, I was sure that I wanted to become an architect, and I kind of changed my mind over time. But at that time, this is before CAD and, you know, a lot of the other things that people do nowadays. But this was when, you know, you started with pencil, and then, you know, you would use India ink to finish off the blueprints. And so that's when I started a little bit with India ink and getting used to it. India ink is really, really great. The thing that's intimidating about it is that you can't erase it. So if you put a line somewhere where you didn't want it, you either scrap it and start over again, or figure out how to incorporate that line or that squiggle into your drawing and make it work.
Now, one of the things I loved about looking through some of your work was when you would show your inspiration photo and then juxtaposition with your work, and it's like incredible how you are able to capture all of those details. you just must have a mind for detail.
I don't know. It's yeah. No, actually, not really. I'm kind of personality-wise, I'm kind of like, yeah, close enough. Sort of.
Really?
Yeah. I guess it's maybe if I wasn't that, I wouldn't do this because
Okay.
I'd be such a perfectionist. I would never finish anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the inspiration sometimes. A lot of the photos I just get off of Flickr or someplace else, or pictures that I've taken. Like I said, a lot of times I would be drawing when I'm traveling, and so I can't take large photos or anything with me. So I'd actually be drawing off of my iPhone, I'd have
Wow.
some picture from something. So it was a lot of zooming in to, try and get the detail and then,
Yes.
translate it to the paper. But
Is it cathartic to you to be able to look at that kind of detail and then recreate it?
yeah. Yeah, it is. It's like when I'm doing it, I'm not thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
It's an absolute escape. And, so that's, really great. I forget where I am and, finally when I kind of stop and lift my head up and look, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm in a hotel room in Guatemala City.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Tell me about your process. So when you find a photo or any inspiration that you want to draw, do you start with the overall shape, or do you do it? I mean, how do you go about creating these pieces?
A lot of the stuff that I've done has been a lot of birds. That's my dad's influence. He was not an artist at all, but he was very interested in birds. So I've always been interested as well. I do a lot of birds, but I've done insects and mammals and other things as well. But yeah, I start off with the kind of a pencil sketch, kind of getting the rough form and major shapes on the paper, and then I work until I get, a lot of times that I get to the eye. And almost any animal that I do at all, I start at the eye and I kind of work my way out from there.
What is it about the eyes that sort of then informs the rest of the face?
Yeah. Well, if you don't get the eyes right, you might as well
you're
just
sunk.
stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that all of us as human beings, we're kind of drawn to that as well.
Sure.
When we speak to each other, we look each other in the eye,
Yeah.
so it's kind of a connecting way. And I think, in art as well, people kind of connect with the eyes, whether it's a person, whether it's an animal, whatever it might happen to be. So yeah, I really want to get that right, first of all. And then from there, everything else can be, I've done owls. Owls have got beautiful eyes. And, if you look at it, you can tell that there's a lot of detail in the eye and around the eye. And then after that, it's kind of, just sort of whatever.
Yeah.
And it seems to work.
Now, you mentioned also that you do a lot of houses. Which do you prefer?
Even though I've done the architectural, stuff in the past, I really prefer doing animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it about the animals that makes you like it more? Because to me, they seem like completely different forms of art.
Yeah. I think just always an interest in nature.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time outside hiking and getting out. I'm an Indiana master naturalist as well, so that's kind of part of my interest.
Yeah.
What is interesting is people seem to be interested in owls, but because they're owls. I don't know what it is. There's something about owls. People like owls.
Yeah.
I do too. But a lot of times if you go to a show and you're showing things, and I've got like an eastern meadowlark, that I did a number of years ago, and I
Yeah.
have prints of it. I've sold very few because people don't generally see eastern meadowlarks a whole lot.
Yeah.
But if you've got a cardinal or a blue jay that they've seen in the yard, they're interested in that.
Sure.
But for me, some of it is, being able to take something that I've seen or, something that a lot of people haven't paid attention to, and then do my interpretation of it in pen and ink. And, all of a sudden people say, what is that?
Yeah.
And I like that.
It's interesting that you say that, something that people maybe haven't looked very closely at. I really loved that about your work. When I looked at maybe a drawing of an owl, for example, I thought, oh my God, of course an owl is that detailed and has that much nuance, but you don't really think of it that way. So it made me step back and think about things a little differently.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which
yeah.
was really cool. Is there something that you haven't drawn that you intend to tackle, or?
I'm working more on insects
Okay.
and doing some of that. That's kind of fun to be able to try. I would love to get some horses. Horses are challenging and difficult, and I think a lot of people would really appreciate those as well. So I think that would be, a lot of fun.
Man, talk about the eyes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
would be cool.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one drawing I've done of a horse, which is basically just the eye and a little bit of the hair around, and it was fun to be able to do.
Yeah. What has your art taught you about yourself?
I think what it's taught me is that I'm able to do this. And I've got my own style, my own approach, and it's okay. Part of it maybe, with my grandfather, my uncles, who did art and were really amazing. I look at it now and it's like, but they didn't do the stuff I'm doing.
Yes.
That's okay. And I think that's really important. I mean, I've watched your show a lot too, and it's kind of like, oh my goodness, there's, artists who are way over here and way over here, and they're doing things that are so different and unique. And that's great. It's kind of figure out what you enjoy doing and then do it. And you may not find an audience, for everything you do, but there'll be people out there that'll really appreciate what you're doing. They'll love it.
Well, I certainly appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your time. What a gift that your art has given you and now us. So thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you.